I study until I'm so tired I need to go to sleep. And I dream about solving the problems at sleep. And I wake up, I'm like, okay, I kind of remember the solution I had in my dreams. So I'm just going to code it this morning.
Hi, I'm Henry, and I'm here today with Judy. Hi, Judy.
Hi, Henry.
I heard you know a thing or two about prepping for software engineering interviews.
Yeah, because I was interviewing for a few months, and I think I went through studying, I went through interview process, and I would like to share some of my experiences with people so I can help people with their interview process.
Can you tell us about your story? Like, when did you start prepping, interview, and get applying and then getting offers, and how long did it take?
I started last year, because it's 2020 already. So I started basically around end of May, and I decided to give myself 1 or 2 months to study, and then I will start to interview immediately after I feel I'm ready. So the entire process takes 3 months. And I spent the first month study really hard. The second month started to do some smaller interviews, and the last month I finished all my major interviews. So the entire process is 3 months.
How did you prep? What was your strategy?
I wanted to interview with all the major companies in the Bay Area, and I know they were looking for people with really solid background on solving coding problems. So I decided I'm gonna majorly use 2 resources. One is LeetCode, which everyone already know. Another one is some of the coding and algorithm books I already have from college. So I studied the algorithms and data structure before I started to use LeetCode. I spent about a week to brush up on the knowledge on data structure, on algorithms. I tried to be able to write them down without looking at the book. And at the moment, I feel like I'm confident. I know all the major algorithms. I know most of the major data structures. I decided to start LeetCode. And I know okay, so this might be a magical number, but according to a lot of the people I know that passed the interviews, you have to finish at least 200 to 300 LeetCode problems. And when I say finish, not mean you just copy the answer and paste over there. You have to actually do it and understand those problems. So I think after I decided I have to finish at least 300 problems, I just break it down for I'm gonna start to do easy, and maybe I will put some medium in it, and then I kind of put it on the schedule for the next 1 month when I'm gonna do it and how much time I'm gonna spend on each problem. If I cannot solve it, do I look at the answer? Things like that. So those are the plans I made in the very beginning, and I stick to it. And I think that really helps to make me feel like I'm in progress instead of I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm actually filling my plan. So step by step, I can see I'm getting better.
If I can recap, you spent 1 week on data structures and algorithms, and then you spent 4 weeks on LeetCode. You did 300 questions in that 4 weeks?
I think the 300 problems were over 2 months, but I did most of it on the first month, and later on I just brush up by keep doing similar questions. And not the same question, but similar, so I kind of refresh on the knowledge I forgot.
How many of them were easy, medium, and hard?
I did over 150 easy. I did about 100 medium, and the rest of them were hard. But I would recommend people to focus on the medium questions because that's where you learn the most.
How did you plan out your schedule?
That's the hard part, because when I say commitment, that means you have to use small piece of time to study. This is not my story, but I have heard some of my friends use their phone to study even in parties. That's how much commitment you need to do to be able to finish this process. And for myself, I do it every night. I spend so much time after work. I go home, I study. I study until I'm so tired I need to go to sleep. And I dream about solving the problems at sleep. And I wake up, I'm like, okay, I kind of remember the solution I had in my dreams. I'm just gonna code it this morning while I'm still having fresh memories. So it's almost like a final. like a final you haven't had for many years, but you study for final. Everyone study for finals when they're in college, and that's what I did for this.
How long did you spend on the questions usually before looking at the answer?
First, I would kind of try to think of some basic ideas. That's like 5 minutes. If after 5 minutes I have no clue what I'm gonna do, that's usually a bad sign, meaning I don't have any knowledge about this topic, so I need to study. And at that point, I probably will just give up and maybe bookmark this question and go back to study the related topic, the data structure or algorithms that's related to this kind of problem. But if I have some clue in the first 5 minutes, I will start to kind of lay out the way I wanted to answer it, and then I will try to go through the layout. It's not actually coding, but I'm just gonna write the pseudocode of how I'm gonna solve this problem. If this looks promising, I will start to code it. And this process will take about like 20 minutes. So I would say before I click my first submit button, it takes me about like 25 to 30 minutes to finish the entire process. And then I will try to submit it and see if I get a pass. When I say submit it, that means I'm gonna test it with a test case, not like submit it to LeetCode, because yeah, it's slightly different. They're gonna test it with all their test cases, and sometimes you don't cover all the corner case. So you just wanted to make sure the baseline works.
But what about those questions where you're still struggling in between?
In that case, I'm probably just gonna look at the answer, but I would make sure I understand the answer and understand the pattern, because I believe when there's a question that really catches me, there must be similar questions in that category. So I wanted to understand this question thoroughly by looking at the answer and looking at other people's solution. And then after I fully understand this problem, I will go practice on other questions in the similar category. So I make sure I fully understand this kind of issue, and next time I saw it, I can solve it.
How many questions did you do before you started applying to jobs?
I did about 200 problems, and I think at the moment I feel confident about doing coding on whiteboard. And I decided to start to go on interviews because I do want to see like what other qualifications is necessary for interview, because coding is the fundamental part, but for the positions I apply for or the company I apply for, they're also looking for other qualifications, which is my background, my resume, my skill set, and I need to go to real interviews to understand what they're looking for in me as a person, what interests them on my resume. And I also need to talk to my interviewers about my past projects, and those things I cannot really practice on LeetCode. So that's when I decided I need to start to go interview.
What was your application process like?
The thing is, usually company has the phone screen, and then they have on-site. And it takes time for them to process your first interview result. So that's the reason I started to apply after the first month, because I know it takes time for me to do the first round of phone screen or some coding quiz, take-home coding quizzes and those kind of stuff. I started after I practiced for 1 month. And then after that, I did like at least 2 or 3 a week. And then I have enough first round interviews, and then recruiters would come back to me and wanted to invite me for on-site. And during that time, I'm also keep studying. So on the 3rd month, I started to set up all my on-site interviews. I tried to put them close to each other because I wanted to get things done pretty quickly. And I think I spent 2-3 weeks do a lot of on-site interviews. And after that, I just wait for the result.
What does a software engineer interview process look like?
For some of the major companies, before the phone interview, which we call it phone screen, sometimes they will give you like a take-home assignment, which is like 3 coding questions that you have to do it on the online platform and then submit it to get a pass. That was the pre-stage before the phone screen. Some company do it, some company don't do it, but for me, I have like 2-3 companies ask me to do the take-home assignments. And then it's the phone screen, which Usually it's like a 40 to 45 minutes call with an engineer. You will spend about 10 minutes to just quickly chat about the team, about the position you're applying for, and then you have 30 minutes for a shared pad. You're gonna code the question on the shared pad. And after that, maybe he will give you like 5 minutes to kind of just have some more follow-up questions about the company, about what you wanted to do, things like that. But usually that's what phone screen looks like. And after that, if you get a good result, you get an invite for on-site interview, which is usually at least 4 or 5 rounds of one-on-one interview with people from that team or that company. And most of the time, I would expect 80% of them will be whiteboard coding. Some of them will be behavior, but I think focus on the whiteboard coding is what matters the most.
Do you get nervous for these on-sites? And if so, what do you do to stay confident?
I would like to see my interviewers as my colleague instead of seeing them as someone who's trying to squeeze the knowledge out of me. I feel like when I handle my interviews, I rather work on giving a solution, meaning I work with the people who interview me. When I was at work, I had many moments that I had to solve a problem with my colleagues. So we have discussions, I throw out some ideas, he throw out some ideas, and then we just discuss it and then solve it. When I go on interviews, those people, potentially, they're gonna be my future colleagues. So I already perceive them as my colleagues, and I just wanted to work out this problem with them. So that creates a pretty relaxing atmosphere that I kind of feel like not nervous by just discuss a problem and solve the problem. Besides, I think there's no shame if you cannot solve a problem, because sometimes maybe you just brain freezed, maybe you just never see this kind of problem before, and it's okay, just discuss with your interviewers and try to learn something that day. When you change your focus from winning this interview to I wanted to, learn something today, you feel more relaxed during the interview.
How many on-sites did you do total? And then of those on-sites, how many of them ended up being offers?
I think probably more than 10 on-sites. And I was really lucky. I got 8 offers.
Can I ask how many of them are from FANG?
Pretty much all of them. And yeah.
Throughout your interview process, what was the most challenging part, besides, of course, the schedule?
To keep yourself motivated, it's really hard because this process, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of commitment. I kind of sacrifice all my other hobbies because I don't have time for them. I have to focus and use my time for this interview process. And it's a little bit hard. I remember when I just started, my friend was visiting me and she was like, "Oh my God, you look terrible. You need to go out a little bit." And I'm like, "Well, but I have 300 problems I need to solve." So it was really hard. In the very beginning, I just cannot be motivated for the problem. But later on, I try to add a little bit break. When I study, I go work out, I go do some fun things with friends. I clear up my mind for a little bit, and I try to keep my mood up instead of just feel like stressed and feel like not motivated to keep doing problems. I think those are like small things you can do to improve this process and to just keep yourself doing it. And always remember, if you have a clear schedule, it's just a few months. It's not a lot, right? Just think about like you're going for like a summer camp or something. Think it that way. Everything will end eventually, and then just do it at the moment and you won't regret.
Well, that's all the questions I had. Thank you so much for sharing about your experience and your advice.
Okay, cool.
Good job.
Thanks. But one thing I really want to cover is it's how I process this, because when I just graduated from college, I really didn't like how the interview process looks like, because I feel like I spent so much time study my major. I'm computer science major, And for some reason, when I go on interviews, nobody cared about what project you did. They all wanted to ask your algorithms. They all want you to do whiteboarding. And I didn't like that. Back then, I feel like it's disrespectful for all the courses I studied. And I feel like by doing this coding interview, they don't know who I am. They don't know what kind of skill set I have. I don't understand how this can test you, can see if you're qualified as a software engineer. That's why when I graduated from school, a lot of the people at that time already started to do this kind of process, but I didn't want to do it because I feel like that's not my style. But over the past few years, I feel like I finally start to realize, unfortunately, a lot of the really important engineering skills that you use at work is hard to test. Like, for example, when you see a bug, when you see a problem, how do you fix it? How do you trace it? Those things, it's more based on your experiences, and it's really hard to test them on the interview. And I realized, well, I guess the reason people were doing this kind of coding interview is to make sure you at least have a good fundamental as a software engineer. You know the algorithms, you can code something on the whiteboard, means you have a deep understanding of coding. For the other experiences, unfortunately, it's going to be on your resume and your project, and maybe you will learn them through this new job, but it's hard to test you about those qualifications, so they decided to take the more efficient way, which is the coding interview. And I realized if I really wanted to prove myself as a good engineer, as a person that can solve problems, I have to prove it on this side first, and then I can prove it in my job, in the job I'm taking, and that's a different story. It's more about working as a software engineer, but I need to at least open the door first, which is this process. So I would like to tell people, I know how you feel about this process. I think a lot of people really don't like it, and they think it's really painful, but I feel like if you want to pursue a software engineering career and you really want to prove yourself, you should do it. And you have plenty of the time in your new team, your new company, to prove who you are, to solve the problems you always want to solve, and just finish this process and you'll get there.